What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I am indeed back on Motorfest because you know what? I had a video I did have to make on this one. That is going to be my top 5 things I do think the game does need to actually be great. Now, I do want to mention though, it's not going to be like a specific order, but just more of the fact of like 5 things I really do think the game most likely does need, which at this point I would say most players are probably going to agree with. And by the way, I do want to mention every single topic is going to be timestamped with like a small thing showing the said topic before I actually get into it. So jumping right into this, guys, the first one I do want to talk about. This one I have definitely discussed in older videos, but I had to include it in this one. That is going to be the Summit Overhaul and the rewards in it. So a lot of players might jump in and go, Block, what do you mean, dude? The summits are fine. Let's be honest, guys, the summits are not fine. Now, when I was recording this video, the Ring Brothers makeover was active, which has a really dope looking charger, which I feel like everybody does want it. But I did want to look at this though and take this a bit deeper and explain why I think the summit needs an overhaul and exactly what they can do to it to make the entire experience better. So looking at the screen right now, guys, I wanted to go right into the main thing here, which is going to be the actual, like, I guess you could say, leaderboard of every platform together. So currently in my main platform, I'm 428th, and then of course in this I'm 745th. Probably not going to be the best overall. Like, yeah, I do know I'm not a pro, but the one thing stood out at me though. The top of it, you're going to see 87,847 players are ranked. Why is that going to be a tad scary or a bit odd? This is actually going to be a pretty dope looking summit car as the main reward compared to something like a tire, and this only has 87,000 people that are ranked. Now, I do know players are probably going to come in and go, dude, that's 87,000 people. What do you mean the summits aren't doing good? Here's the thing about this though, that is going to be 87,000 people in the summit across every single platform. You're talking about PS4, PS5, both Xboxes and PC. So if you actually think about this for a second, that is not that many people. The reason why I also find this a bit odd is if we go back to something like the Crew 2, that is actually going to have over 70,000 people on normally most of the days. Even getting on right now, guys, I can check it. I'll actually show some footage of that in the background. There is still going to be a good amount of players on that game on just PlayStation 4 and 5. I would say a lot of players might jump on that and go, wait a second, this is actually a lot of people jumping onto this game and doing the summits, and if we go back onto Motorfest, there is not a ton of people doing them. So what is going to be the biggest solution to this? Well, to be honest, guys, I feel like it comes down to two things. Number one is going to be, for first, make the summits a bit more fun, man. What I mean by that is make all the events a tad different, make them really mixed up, and actually make players want to go, bro, this summit is dope. Now, I hate to say this though, but the overall fundamental designs of Motorfest I feel like play a role in this. If you are wondering what I mean by that, well, let's take a look at this. We all do know most of the events in this game can be used with every single vehicle in each of the races, which is kind of funny because I did want that in the Crew 2, but now I'm actually noticing if every race is designed around every single category, it kind of takes the fun or like the uniqueness and or the variety out of the events. So if we actually had something like the Crew 2 to where all the events were different, set up for different classes, that would probably make it a bit more entertaining. That way the summits would be a bit more intense. A good way to look at this though is on that game we had hypercar races, you know, street races, we had rally raid, all that stuff, guys. We had like the racing events on the tracks and stuff. But it made it very unique because if you did want to use a street vehicle in those set events, it would actually make it really fun because you're like, yo, I get to drive my street vehicle on a racetrack, that's dope. Here in Motorfest though, we're only going to have one racetrack, and if they actually put some of those on there, you're like, okay, well, I've done this entire track about 50 other times in a racing car, so it's probably not going to be all that fun in an actual street vehicle. But if we actually had 3 or 4 other racing tracks, which don't get me wrong, isn't going to happen, it would probably mix up something like a summit event even more because boom, you would not keep seeing the exact same event over and over in that said summit. You would most likely have different events popping up that you haven't seen that vehicle in. The next thing I did want to talk about in this though is going to be the skills. Now I have mentioned in different summit videos and other videos, this is probably not going to be a new thing I have talked about, but let's be honest, guys, the skills do need a rework as well, whether it's the scoring on them. For example, I don't know why they actually capped all these slaloms and stuff like that that needs a score breaker. to around 129,000 points. There is basically not even a reason to use a score breaker set now because, you can actually get around 127,000, 126,000, being around 2 to 3,000 points behind somebody that has grinded for a score breaker. It doesn't make sense. While you can actually get 150,000 points on a speed trap, which technically one of the only ways to actually do that on many of them is to slipstream somebody else in order to get a higher score or being much faster in that said speed trap. The other one you can actually get over 150,000 points in is going to be the escapes. Now the issue with that is going to come down to the traffic, spawning basically everywhere and getting insanely annoying, where other runs you actually have no traffic. One of the things I really wanted was, for one, yes, fix the scoring on the skills. I really do feel like grinding for a score breaker should actually be worth going after because, let's be honest guys, I can make a separate video on this. The overall going after like a said part set really doesn't have much meaning to it whatsoever in this game. I have to be honest, it doesn't. But I do want to clarify on why I think that is. If we are looking at something like a summit, guys, a Nitro Chemist set is definitely going to be helpful. I mean, yes, you can use it on something like an escape on the races, which is probably going to make you a lot faster than not having one. So I do admit, yes, they are going to be really good for the summits. Having a score breaker can get you around 3 to 4,000 more points on the slaloms and some of the main skills. But you know what though? All you can actually use these said part sets is in the summits, which is kind of odd to me. I'll touch more on that here in a second. There's also one more thing I did want to mention again in this video, which I did actually say in older videos. That is going to be having these skills locked behind certain classes. Like, for example, have a slalom being only able to use on a streetcar, or, seeing a speed trap with just something like an Alpha GP vehicle. Maybe on that set escape, you can only use a motocross bike or like a rallycross car, and then they can actually go in and adjust the said scoring to the actual vehicle classes that are being used. I just feel like that would make them so much more fun having something mixed up like that, instead of everyone basically picking like the same 2 or 3 vehicles for every single skill we actually see. Like, a good example of this is going to be a speed trap. You always see these same few drag cars. In escapes, guys, it's going to be 99% hypercars because, everything else isn't fast enough to get a higher score. But if they were to adjust the said scoring, then you can actually use other classes in that said skill, which I really do think would make that way more entertaining and also more difficult, because you have to use something like a rallycross in that. You can't jump into the Bugatti, which is pretty much the main car everyone runs. No, you actually have to use something else. And even for like a slalom, even right now, you could basically run any class on them, but lock it to something like even a rally raid. Maybe you have to use a tier 1 vehicle, and like that would be so dope. And the best part about that though is if they were to lock it, then having some of those part sets for certain classes is going to be so dang viable. Like, you have to have more speed in them. So yes, a chemist set is needed. If you have to use a tier 1 vehicle in that said slalom, having something like a score breaker is probably going to be needed to actually get a higher score, which for that would probably be 155,000 points. Now, the next thing I did want to talk about here with the summit is probably going to be the most obvious thing ever, and I most likely don't even have to talk about this one a lot because everyone's like, yeah, dude. That is going to be the rewards. Now, a lot of players might jump into this and go, I mean, I'm not in this for the rewards. Yes, that may be true, but if you look at something like this summit, giving us the incandescent tire from the Crew 2, which is also a platinum reward, why would you actually jump on for that said reward that's going to be a tire we have seen around 2.5 years ago in the Crew 2? Besides that, guys, we're also going to get the KTM 520XC in that. Then we're going to get 10 legend points. Also, 5,000 spare parts is legitimately nothing. The other one, let's move over to this here. We're then going to have the West Side Smoke. Now, I admit that one's actually pretty dope. We're then going to have the Maserati MC20. So I would say if you don't own these vehicles, then yes, it is going to be a great way to get them. On the other side of that though, if you do own them, the game only gives you around $300,000 for a hypercar. That is honestly a bit insane. If you got something like the ATV here, it's probably $100,000, which I would say makes sense, like the ATV isn't that expensive. And then for the next summit on this though is going to be the lovely Dodge Charger Tusk Edition, which I would say everybody's like, yo, it's a car, I have to get it. Funny thing is, guys, not only is this going to be a dope platinum reward, but take a look at the other rewards you actually get during that said car. In that summit, we have gold, the Dominion Gold Underglow. That's going to be an epic underglow, where we have actually seen rare underglows as a platinum reward in older summits. 200,000 bucks and 100,000 XP that you actually get towards your level if you're over the max rank for the main stage. Now this I would say right here is going to be interesting because let's go over to the next summit. We're then going to have a tire which looks kind of cool. Doesn't have a lot of design on it. That's an epic tire. Probably could be a rare tire. Then we're going to have the BMW M4 which everybody most likely owns it. So expect around $100 to $150,000 for that one. Then you're also going to get 3 legendary perf parts, which is kind of dope. They definitely should be doing that a lot more often. Then you're going to once again get 5,000 spare parts in bronze. The thing about this though is I would say the main level like street parts you get really should be something specific like let's say 3 chemist parts, 3 score breakers like how they were in the crew 2. But that would actually make players look at this and go, okay, so instead of getting 3 random gold parts, I'm going to get 3 loot digger parts, 3 score breaker, 3 chemists. That way they can actually complete a set or make another set and then have another build afterwards. I feel like that's the best way to do it. It really is odd though, man, because if we look at a summit like the one with the Dodge Charger in it, you're probably like, bro, look how good the rewards are in this one. Then you go look at the others and you're like, really? Like the ATV, we have a tire, 10 legend points, and 5,000 spare parts, man. Like, that really does need to be updated. On top of that, though, looking at the main summit, guys, we do know we get some of the rewards. Like, we're going to get the XP thing here. We're going to get a golden smoke. And then we're also going to get 5 legendary parts for street. Like, that's cool. I admit, like, that's pretty dope. You actually get stuff. But in the crew 2, though, if you looked at the summit, every single event you did actually gave you something to unlock or go after. It could be something like the main smoke you saw on the top over here, something like 50,000 XP. You then have like maybe $50,000 from completing an event. Wouldn't that make a lot more sense if every single event in that said summit had something like that tied to it? Maybe doing one of the events gave you 2 legendary parts for it. The other one's going to give you 50,000 XP. After that, you get $50,000. You're then going to get a smoke and stuff like that. Like, that would be so dope. And more players would be like, yo, I actually want to do this summit because I can make an extra 150 grand doing the events. And then on top of that, you can also go up a few levels by gaining some extra XP from the events. You can also then get yourself some gold parts from them. And I feel like adding a few vanity items into the said summits in the main events themselves, instead of having them as a main platinum reward in the summit, would probably be a way better way to do it. The best part about that, guys, I really feel like a lot more players would want to do the summits and log on and do them, because that way you're going to get money, parts, XP, different vanities. It will really bring players into it, which I really do believe is probably going to be the overall factor of why there's not a ton of players doing the summits, hence why the entire player count on them is much lower than it was ever before. Do let me know what you guys think about the entire summits in the comments below. But now for the next thing I did want to talk about is going to be the main stage and the rewards and the overall design of it. So this is probably not going to be all that surprising because I have legitimately seen this everywhere. A lot of people are not the biggest fan of the main stage. Now I do want to admit right now, I do understand they did finally end up adding challenges to it, but even then, guys, the entire design of the main stage is so dang barren. And the funny thing about this though is you might actually look at the main stage upon first glance and go, wait bro, what are you talking about? We have rewards here you can get. Moving over to the next one, we have more rewards you can get, and then so on with the other one. The thing about this though is, yes, you can get a few things like some vehicles, some legend points, an XP booster, or a common title from each one of them, and normally like a random piece of like gear, like an outfit or something like a hat, a shirt or something like that, and that is pretty much it. The reason why I think this is going to be a problem is, yes, you can do the challenges. That's going to be a dope thing they added. But the issue, guys, once you actually finish those, then you have to get to level 100 in the main stage. I did actually make a video about this before, and I do know this is probably not going to be a new thing I have discussed. But you know what, though? It has to be in this video. Because I do feel like a lot of people look at the main stage and go, why am I doing this? And the reason why I am saying this though is the way you actually get rewards from the main stage really doesn't make sense, man. Like, you get a few things to level 4, and then it goes to level 20, 50, then 100. Like, what even is that? Also, guys, if you are wondering, you can tell right here that I haven't been leveling up. I am actually going to be 39,000 right now at level 6. There's 160,000 people at the time of this video that are ranked. The insane part to me is I'm level 39,000 at level 6. So I'm going to say right now that around half that number is probably not even on the game, or at least they're probably barely even leveled. But the thing about this though is a lot more players would probably play the game and level up if there was a bigger reason to do it. So yes, you're going to get rewards from these main things here once they're done, and then boom, that is it. Like even on this one, guys, you get like an emote there and then another title. You get the Camaro, you get an XP boost as I mentioned. And now I do understand you do actually get challenges, but here's the thing, after these are done, what do you actually get from leveling up with doing the challenges? You're going to get the XP boost, a tire, a vehicle that was back in the crew 2, so if you did play it, you most likely have that car so you don't even have to do it. And then after that, you're then going to get titles up until level 100. Let's be honest, guys, I have to say it. The entire title design is honestly awful. Like, I had to say it. You know what? It is. It's awful. The reason for that is how many players actually even run them, and is a title really going to get you onto the game to go, you know what, bro? I want to hit level 100 so I can get a title. I don't think anybody has ever said that. Now, a lot of players might be like, well, Blocked, if you feel this way, how would you fix it? This is going to be fairly simple, so when looking at the main stage, all you guys actually have to do is give us more rewards. That's it. So for this, instead of getting nothing from level 4 to level 20 besides a title, how about this, guys? Every single level you get, even from level 1, you get 20,000 bucks. I know it's not that much money, but if you actually wanted to level up, you actually get 20 grand every time, even 25,000. By the time you get level 100, bro, you're going to have enough money to buy a car in the game if you actually wanted to do it. On top of that, why don't you get something like a gold part every time you level, or at least every few levels, similar to something like we saw in the Crew 2, to where you always got something every time you leveled the icon thing up, and I feel like the main stage has to follow suit with it. Also, guys, on top of getting like a money bonus every time you level up in the main stage, they can also add gold parts. They can even add something like a car every 10 levels. What I mean by that is add like a random street car in there every 10 levels. That way you get an extra money bonus if you already own that vehicle. Like a lot of players are going to go, yo, if I actually leveled up the main stage, I can make a lot of money this month by actually doing this on top of doing the events and making even more money every time I level up. I'm then going to get gold parts from it. You can maybe even add some vanities in there every 5 to 7 levels that we don't have, or even old vanities, instead of only putting them in the summits. I just feel like there's so many ways they can do it that would actually bring players into this said main stage and really want to level it up. Instead, guys, I feel like there's going to be a lot of players, including myself, that are probably going to level it up just slightly and most likely not even go past level 4 like level 7 or 8 because there's just not a reason to level it up. Do let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. For the next one though, fix the bugs in the game. This could be something like joining a crew and doing a race, or even the playlist challenges. Funny thing is, I actually thought something like this should end up being a priority on their list. That way it's going to be fixed now and not like 5 months from now. Even though, guys, we're legit around a year into this game and you still can't complete challenges and join a crew to do some of the challenges in the game. Like, it's a bit ridiculous. Funny thing is, I do know people might come through and go, well, Blocked, you know what, man? Like, these are going to be some of the playlists. They're not that big of a deal. People don't even like them, so it doesn't matter. Like, I do hear you. Yes, the playlist design in this game isn't that great, but we can also admit right now, though, if you did want to actually make some money in the game, or, you know, have something to do, the playlist challenges are something to do, right? And on top of that, though, you also get yourself some extra money, XP, and also some of the outfits and some of the audio signatures by doing the challenges. So I feel like players are most likely going to want to do them. That way they can make the money, go after the audio signature they might have wanted. I really do feel like most players don't care about the titles because I barely see anyone use them, but at least that's also going to be there. The issue with that, though, is if you can't complete the challenges, how do you get any of this stuff unlocked, guys? Most of the challenges in the game do seem to kind of work for the most part, unless you have to do some of the crew challenges because you can't join a crew correctly, which is honestly insanely frustrating for that matter because, you know, we're around a year in and I still can't join a friend to do a crew challenge and do an event, which I don't know how that makes any sense. On top of that, though, we're also going to have some of the challenges like the vanity ones that require you to put on like an underglow or like a tire that still don't work. Some of the new challenges I have been hearing also having problems on top of this is going to be the challenges that require you to do a grand race. What's really odd about this though is none of these challenges in the past had any problems. I really do feel like most of the newer updates are probably breaking them. Do let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. I do know a lot of players are not happy about it. I do know we're getting a lot of cars and new stuff to do in the game when it comes to cars. But besides that, you know what, man? Like, fix the challenges, bro. We're almost a year in. Like, this should not be an issue. I'm kind of afraid to when the newer updates come out, is there going to be more broken ones in the future that they're not going to fix, or they're going to take 6 months to fix them? The last thing, guys, I had to mention in this is probably going to be the most obvious thing ever. People still cannot join their friend or at least invite their friend, and they still can't play together in different races. I would say this is probably going to be one of the biggest issues because of one key thing. What is the name of the game we're all playing? The Crew. You should be able to join a crew and play together, but you still can't even a year into the game, man. Like, I just feel like that's a bit ridiculous. Now, I do understand looking at this from like a different perspective that fixing this could actually be incredibly difficult, and they have been working on it. Like, the coding around it could be really annoying to fix it, or it could actually be a big problem. But there's also going to be another side of that, guys, I have to think about. This is not the first Crew game. We had the Crew 1 back in 2014, I think it was, so around 10 years ago. That game also had issues joining a crew for a very long time in it, and the funniest thing is the Crew 2 had the same problems afterwards. I had a lot of times on that game where I was trying to do races with my friend back then, and we could never get each other to show up in that before we actually start the race. Funny thing is, if you actually tried to start the race with your friend not being with you, the race would never start. The thing about this though is that does actually make sense needing everybody there before you actually do the event, but the thing is though, if you spawn on your friend or spawn next to them for the event, you don't even show up. Like, I had times I had to drive away, turn the game off to join back, and then hopefully actually see my friend to do the event. And it just really does surprise me because we've had issues joining crews, actually playing with people in a said crew for around 10 or so years now, man. Like, it's just a bit insane. The biggest thing though is this game is basically marketed around playing with a crew or playing with people, and if you can't actually join your friend, why even do it? The next thing I did want to talk about, PvP updates. I do know for a fact right now this is probably not going to be all that shocking seeing this in this entire list, because we all do know this is easily the most requested thing from almost everybody. The thing about this though, guys, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this topic because I have made a lot of videos about this, so I don't want to get annoying or like keep repeating myself on that matter. But the easiest way to make this a lot better though is make it so we actually can use every class in PvP. We can use a tier 2 hypercar racing, rally raid, have different races for those specific classes to where it's not only going to be grand races that is insanely random, picking 3 random classes which most players only like tier 2 or, you know, hypercars and racing, where they're probably not going to use the other classes nearly as much if that is going to be in a grand race. The reason why I would also like to see other classes being separated is you can actually test out other cars in those said categories a bit more and see which ones might actually be good or even bad, and that way you can actually change your pro settings and go, okay, I just updated this Ferrari, let me jump into a tier 2 event and see how this thing does in this PvP race versus everybody else. That would actually make way too much sense. On top of that, the other thing I would like to see is let us actually have an entire PvP category to where you can actually run these said parts that you have spent so much time grinding for. Now, the first thing I do want to mention here is I'm not saying make like the entire PvP based around that, but at least have the option in there. Like, for example, have the grand races in there still, then have the entire category thing to where you can use any of the cars in those specific events with no part sets. Then have something with the part sets. I mean, guys, another way they could do this is have that actual category set up like this. You can use something like an XP magnet set to where you have to run that. That way everybody's in there's actually grinding money and XP in the events. Then you can actually do something like only chemist, only loot digger. I feel like that would be so fun to have in PvP, bro. And it's going to give so many players options if they have the sets. Like, let's say you actually wanted to do one of those races, you don't have the part set. Maybe you could say you don't have this part set yet, would you still like to do it? That way you can put on the main parts you actually have for that set. Maybe it's, 5 of 7 parts. Put those on there, you can still get extra bonuses and go after part sets and stuff like that, but compete in those races going after other part sets. I feel like that would be dope. And that way, if you did want to jump on and try hard and have like a chemist set active, you can do it. I really do feel like, guys, having a variety like that on PvP would make this game probably one of the best racing games to date with an insane amount of things you can do. I do know a lot of players want to hate on Unbound, which, to be honest, the recent update wasn't the biggest thing I'm actually a fan of, but it's still pretty fun. The reason why Unbound's dope, though, is there is so much to do on the PvP side of it. There's link-ups, there's races, there's specific events, there's playlists. There is so many things to do on the PvP side of that stuff, which I really do feel like Motorfest needs to have so dang badly. That would not only make a lot more players want to play the game most likely, because let's be honest, the grand races around a year in, guys, they're kind of boring, bro. I mean, you're basically moosed. Had to say it, like, you don't have an option. You have to do the grand races. I don't want to be moosed, man. I want to have other things I can do. And I feel like only having grand races for PvP isn't the most fun thing ever. Now, I do know we also have the Demolition Royale, but let's be real, nobody's even playing that game mode. So I feel like that's probably going to be a wash there. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. I would almost guarantee right now that about 99% of players are going to go, yes, bro, I really like that idea on PvP, let's do it. And you know what, guys? Not only would that make the entire player count shoot up, it would make the overall experience so much better. Then the final one, I did want to talk about more things to do. Now you're probably going to look at that and go, dude, what do you mean? So there's going to be a few things I did want to touch on in this category. Number one, though, a lot of players might be like, well, what do you mean by more things to do? So this can come down to a few different things. They can add daily challenges into the game that get you money, parts, different bonuses you could probably go after. One thing, guys, I would also really like to see again, which I would like to know your thoughts on, is where is the actual playlist having a money or an XP bonus on them? We actually saw that one time, I think, right? Why have we not gotten that again? I have mentioned those old videos. Why did we not get that on like a weekly basis to every single playlist? I mean, what is there, like 15 of them now? Something like that? That's around 15 weeks of every playlist having a different bonus. Like, just do that, man. That way players can jump into that said playlist that week, make extra money and stuff. And I'm willing to bet right now that would easily bring in a lot more players to do the actual playlist and most likely do the events in them, instead of most likely doing all the races and going, okay, bro, let me go do the summit, that's already done, so what do we have now? The grand races. Like, there's just not that many incentives to bring you back into the game, so like, why not actually have something like a small bonus on every playlist that rotates weekly? That way players actually would want to jump on and play the game a bit more, go after more money, parts, and all that stuff, be able to buy some cars, even level up the main stage a bit quicker, man. Like, imagine that. If the entire main stage was upgraded like I said it was earlier in the video, imagine having a bonus of XP in the playlist. Like, a lot of players would go, okay, I'm going to play this playlist for a while, that way I can get more XP and stuff, level up and get more money from the actual main stage itself and parts, and also other bonuses like vanities, man. Like, there would be so many things in different areas that you could go after, and so many more things to do. And wait, there's actually more you can do with it. Now I'm starting to sound like an infomercial. That's what I wanted. But even then, guys, they can add weekly challenges that give you vanity items or different cars that are tied to the weekly challenges. Now, I do understand players are going to be like, well, bro, most of the people already own these cars, but you know what? If you actually did those said weekly challenges, you would get a money bonus if you had the cars. Then you can actually get even more money from the main stage being updated. You then have the booster on the actual playlist, man. Like, there would be so many things to do. Now, imagine this for a second, guys. All of that being said, the entire summit gets overhauled. We then have the entire PvP thing being changed around a bit, so you can actually use, part sets in there. You can use different categories. There's even a ranked mode that might come out. Imagine that for a second, guys. This game would be so full of content, it would almost be hard to argue that it's not one of the best games out there. The thing about this, though, is the only issue I probably see with it is that is going to be an entire overhaul to pretty much the entire game. Like, are we going to have all of that this year? I hate to say it, but that's probably going to be a big no. Like, that is going to be a lot of work to add most of that stuff. But then again, though, the game has already been out a year or so, so like, get that stuff in there, implement it before it's probably going to be too late to a point to where, you know what? Everybody might go, man, they're not going to update this game and add what we want. We're so far into this, we want this stuff, nothing has been added. I'm just going to move on and go play something else. This is also why a lot of players are most likely going to play Solar Crown and stuff, because it's going to be a new racing game to where I do feel like the developers are actually stepping in, changing things and making a difference in there. Even though they might actually go quiet once in a while, we are still getting things players are asking for. And the first thing that pops into my mind with this though is you can go on X, YouTube, Instagram. There is people talking about the issues legitimately everywhere. But yet guys, we have not seen a fix for the playlist challenges, and people are like, yo, I can't even join my friend yet. That video I made a while ago, there's still people commenting on it saying they can't join their friend and they can't actually play together. Bro, that is honestly ridiculous. But overall though guys, let me know your thoughts on all of these things in the comments below. To be honest, I could probably make this list a lot bigger, which I might touch on in a separate video, but in this one though, I did want to go over the main things I actually feel like should end up being a priority over many of the other ones. Again guys, let me know your thoughts on this entire list in the comments below.